started with the actual presentation, let me just ask,
Could you introduce yourself first?
yeah, okay, sorry, that's right. I'm Tony Faconis, I'm the president of the SOA. And I've been working on this deal along with Danielle Kirby, who's another board member, and Ray Lee, who's a board member. We've been working on this pretty much since January of 2013 is when we first started discussions. They started out on a very different direction, but this opportunity came up and we've been pursuing this for quite a while. Let me just ask, how many people here? Perfect, thank you. Just to ask, how many people here have either been to one of the previous information sessions or had a chance to look at the previous presentations online? Can I just get a show of hands, get a rough idea? Okay, so a number of you have, but there's also a number of people that haven't. The reason I ask that is that in this presentation, I'm not going to go into all of the detail that's in the previous presentation. They're still on the mysomerset.com website. You can see it, but there's a lot of history and background and things like that on why we started talking and what what had happened previously. So I'm not going to go over all that tonight, because most people have heard it multiple times. But if there are questions for people who have not seen that, if something I say suddenly makes a big leap and you're not quite sure where it's coming from, please feel free to ask. The idea here tonight is to make the presentation shorter and get to questions more quickly than some of the other presentations that were pretty long and drawn out trying to cover all of the background. So the other thing is, for the people that have seen the previous material, what you're going to see is that the key points of the deal are pretty much exactly as they were in the letter of intent. There were a lot of other details that got worked out, and there are a few things that changed, a couple things that changed, which I will highlight tonight. But for the most part, the bulk of the agreement that we came to is very consistent with what was in the letter of intent. And again, all that information is posted on the website. So I urge you to take a look and go through that, and we'll try to, like I say, do less presentation and more questions and answers tonight to give people a chance to try to really understand or find out what it is they're most interested in. Okay, the agenda, I'm just going to basically go through the proposed agreement. This is the whole thing, and it's online. And these are the actual agreements that were signed. As I'll talk about here in a second, let me just get back to this slide and I'll come back. This is just from the previous presentation, really quickly, just to put in perspective. The yellow lines are the boundaries of Somerset. The red is the property that is owned by the country club. Okay, and so that's what we're talking about. There's a little 5.5 acre piece in there that the country club now owns, where the current restaurant and pro shop and that is, and they're keeping that piece of land. We'll talk about that a little bit too. But as you can see, the main point of this is, this isn't like something stuck in the corner. This goes all through the community. I would guess, and this is just my guess, but from driving around on the golf course, I would bet that something like 80% of the houses in Somerset can see something of the golf course from their yard or their house, whatever. It's spread out throughout. The agreement that we came up with has 3 parts, and you'll see them when you look at it. They're actually 3 contracts, but they're all interrelated. And the way this was done, the reason this is important is neither the SOA or the country club would do this deal without all 3 of these things happening simultaneously. It's not a pick and choose. It's basically either it all happens or none of it happens. The 3 parts are the purchase agreement, which basically is exactly what it sounds like. This is the first piece of the contract that says what we're buying, what we're paying for, and just similar to if you were buying, you know, a house or a commercial building or something like that. As with most purchase agreements, once the deal closes, the bulk of it is over. There are a few pieces that survive, and we'll talk about those a little bit. For example, there's a warranty involved, so they'll survive for the length of the warranty. The lease agreement is really the heart of the ongoing deal here. What we're doing is we've worked out an arrangement where the association will buy the property to own it, which avoids all kinds of issues in the future and potential legal problems, especially if the country club fails or closes down for whatever reason. But we are not buying it to run a golf course. We're not interested in running a golf course. We're going to immediately lease it back to them for them to run their country club. And what's different about this than most leases is, I imagine people in here probably own either rental property or stuff like that. What you'll see is the terms of this lease is that the country club basically pays all their own costs. We don't have ongoing obligations as part of that. And that basically is the idea, to lease it back to them, have them keep it in the kind of conditions it's in, but not cost the rest of the homeowners any ongoing money for maintenance and upkeep and things like that. There's a couple little tweaks to that which I'll talk about, but basically all that's laid out in the lease agreement. The third agreement is called the Water Facility Agreement, and you may or may not know that right now there is a contract that's in place. It was in place, I guess, well, certainly well before my time, probably 2005 or something like that. But part of the water infrastructure that's used to water both the big golf course and the Canyon 9 golf course, part of it is shared. And that's because both the country club and the association has certain water rights to pull water from the Truckee River. So there's a pump house down on the bank of the Truckee River. There's, I think it's something like 11,000 foot pipeline that goes through Mobile and comes up here, and it dumps into the big pond down on Canyon 9, the one that's right behind the clubhouse. And it obviously didn't make sense to build two of all those so that the country club can have one for their water and we can have one for the Canyon 9 water. So there's a joint facility there, and there's a contract right now called the Water Sharing Agreement, which specifies let me back off and just say, you may not know, all that infrastructure, including the pond behind the clubhouse over on Canyon 9, is actually owned by the country club. When the developer decided how he's going to split it up, he put all of it into the country club. So there's an agreement right now that says they've got to agree to operate in a way that we can get our water, and if we were to operate that stuff, we'd have to operate in a way that they can get their water. But that's what the water facility agreement under the new facility is. We, the SOA, the association, will own all of the infrastructure. So we'll always be able to use that for the Canyon 9, but again, because the country club also depends on that, we've got an agreement on how that will be operated so we can both use that common part the way it's been used for pretty much ever since the golf courses were built. So that's what the water facilities agreement's about. And the important thing there, I think, is both that it has to be operated for the mutual benefit of both organizations, and this agreement for going forward specifies all the details about who does the maintenance and repairs and who pays for what and so forth. So it's a pretty important part of the contract. But the water facility agreement runs in place as long as the lease is there. If the country club gives up the lease, or they shut down, or for whatever reason they stop leasing the land, then everything reverts to the association and there's no longer a need for the water facility agreement, because we would own all the land and have to take care of all the land. So we can talk about that later too. But anyway, those are the three parts which you'll see. Technically, the lease is an exhibit to the purchase agreement, and the water facility agreement is an exhibit to the lease, but they're actually, you can look at them and see them as three standalone contracts that lay out all these interrelated pieces. Okay, so what are we buying? We're actually buying real property in this case. Excuse me, is there?
Tony, you, on previous presentations, you had a great slide that began it with what was the problem that you're trying to solve. Are you going to do that tonight?
No, I wasn't. That was part of what I can touch on that briefly, but what I'd like to do is let's go through the presentation because it may answer some of your questions, and then we can loop back. But I will talk about that. I'm just not using that same slide. Okay. One of the things that's very different than the current agreement for amenities and stuff is we are buying real stuff that has value. Okay, we're going to buy about 224 acres of land. Okay, and I call it green space because what happens to it if the country club shuts down is up to the residents of Somerset. So whether it stays a golf course, whether we turn it into a park, whether we do anything else with it. Can I just kind of go through before we get questions?
I just have one question. The words that keep coming out from you is, "we are buying."
Yeah.
Did the homeowners, both homeowners associations, give you guys the authority to go ahead and buy this land?
Well, the board is elected with the authority of doing what's best, but what we're doing is the homeowners are going to vote on it. As you're going to see, none of this takes place. It's not effective at all until it's approved by both the country club equity members and homeowners. Okay, so hold on.
The vote's been out there.
No, they're totally different votes. Let me get through here, and then we'll deal with those questions. Okay. We're going to get about 411 acre-feet of water rights, plus another 100 acre-feet of supplemental rights, which has to do with situations like right now. If we can't draw, the supplemental water rights, as I understand them, allow that if you can't draw certain water that you're entitled to out of the Truckee River, you can draw it from your other sources, up to 100 acre-feet a year. So the water rights, I think, are critical. As I said, we will end up owning all of the water distribution facilities, including the pump house and the pipeline from the Truckee River up here, as well as distribution within Somerset, and the maintenance building, which is over next to the driving range. Pretty much, like I said, everything that's real property and improvements on real property that the country club owns, except for the land right where the restaurant and so forth is, that's what we're buying in this deal, okay? To me, what I think is substantially more important is we are getting the developer to give up his reverter rights, okay? And you may or may not know that right now, under the current contracts that build Somerset and everything else, that if the big golf course stops being a golf course, the land and the water and everything goes back to the developer. Okay, he gets it all back. And then what he does at that point is pretty much anything he wants. Whether he wants to build, or I would guess more likely, he would sell it to other builders, the way he sold off other parts of Somerset for other builders to do. He could do exactly what happened at Northgate, where the water rights he could strip away the water rights to take them somewhere else, or sell them, or do whatever, and just abandon the land, and we'd be exactly where Northgate is right now. So to me, and this gets back to some of the strategic issues that you brought up over there, one of the main things that we saw here is that without eliminating the developer's right of reversion, there was no form of this deal that was worth doing. Okay? And at this point, the developer, just last week, has signed. So that's a done deal, assuming the deal is approved and then closes. At closing, he gives up his reverter rights, and since we will be the owners of the property, in essence, that means everything will come back to the association if anything happens to the country club. Okay?
Is there a date for this to all to take place, the final thing? It should all be done by.
Well, that depends on the vote. It depends on you guys. If the vote doesn't approve it, then none of this happens.
When's
Okay?
the vote going to be?
Well, let me get to that. Okay? I mean,
want to tell you.
What do we pay this guy to get rid of him?
nothing. No.
Have them just.
I'm not gonna try to guess, but, to me, you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If he's signed, he's signed. Okay? Yeah, and he is, and I assume that he's doing it because he wants this deal to go through. I don't know if he gets tax benefits, I don't know how any of that stuff works. But I can tell you, we are not writing him a check. He does not walk away from closing with any cash. At least certainly not from the association, and I don't know of anything where he's getting cash from anybody else. So, anyway, moving on. A key part of the purchase agreement for everything that we're buying, for all the improvements, basically, so that includes the pipes, the pumps, the retaining walls, the cart paths, whatever, the maintenance building. We are getting a full 4-year warranty from the country club as part of this, and that was done because no matter how closely we look at a lot of that stuff, you can't always tell, everything that's going on, but to get some protection, basically the country club has agreed that they will take full financial responsibility for anything that happens to the property. In terms of, things break, they don't work the way they're supposed to. Obviously, they're not guaranteeing earthquakes and things like that, but they're giving us a full 4-year warranty on everything that we're buying. Okay? Which eliminates a lot of the risk for the association. We also negotiated a right of first refusal for the building site that they're keeping. The piece of land they're keeping is what was always intended to be the country club's clubhouse building site. They are keeping that, and as I understand, their plans are to use, the money that they're getting out of the sale in order to build a clubhouse or provide better, benefits for their members. Obviously, that is like a little island now, totally surrounded by association, because we'll get all of what's the golf course, the driving range, and all that kind of stuff. And, our intent in doing this deal is to we want them to make their best effort to be successful, because that has a benefit to the whole community in terms of the golf course stays green, it stays, in great condition, and it doesn't cost the rest of us money to keep it up, because they will be paying for all that, just as they do now. Okay. One of the things that we negotiated as an incentive for them not to just kind of do a half-hearted effort and walk away or do anything like that is we negotiated a right of first refusal. But what's different about this is during the first 5 years after closing, if they try to sell that land to anybody, we have the right to buy it at 50% of whatever their best offer is. Okay, and you'll see language in the contract about it being from a third party, bona fide offer, all that kind of good stuff. But for the first 5 years, we tried to build an incentive for them not to sell that property or try to do something else. And they've agreed to that. So for the first 5 years, we can buy it 50%. After that, we still have a right of first refusal for any sale on that property if if Somerset decides, or the board at the time, and the homeowners, whoever, decide that that's a piece of property they want at that point in time. Can I please just get through this?
does the lease, is the lease part of that or not? In other words,
They are inseparable. The deal will not close
no,
unless,
I don't mean it that way. If after 5 years it goes away, or they sell to somebody else, does the lease go to their sale?
No.
Or does the lease?
no, they are not allowed to transfer or sign the lease. Okay. Some other key points is, right now, the association's paying a certain amount, and all association members have the rights to a couple rounds of golf, use the restaurant, play bocce ball. We've got some improvements to that, a little bit more than what they had before, but the amenity access will continue at no further payments from the association. So, right, we've done some improvements to it. For example, under the current range, if you look at the stuff that's online, you'll see all the details, but just, real quickly, this is what currently is being paid, actually $12, we negotiated a reduction, but it started out as $15 per unit per month, and we've negotiated, instead of 2 rounds of golf, everybody can have 4 rounds of golf. You're no longer limited to only hitting from the back of the driving range. If you want to go to the back of the driving range, you can hit as many balls as you want for free, all day long. If you want to hit from the front, if you want to hit off the grass, then for $10 a day, you can hit as many balls as you want to hit. Okay? If, as they periodically do, because of the condition of the grass, sometimes even from the front, the equity members hit off of mats instead of hitting off the grass. Anytime that the mats are out, it's first come, first served. You have the right to hit unlimited balls from the front at no cost, as long as there's space available. Things like that. So we made some minor improvements. To me, this is, it's a substantial cost savings to the association over what they were paying for access to this. But as I said earlier, the real benefit of this deal, as far as I'm concerned, is elimination of the reverter rights and making sure we have title to the property. So if there's a bankruptcy or something like that, we're not going to be tied up in a lot of legal fights to try to get the property, and especially the property we need, such as the pipeline to the Truckee River. It'll already be ours. Okay?
One quick question on this. Do you keep saying associate, that includes our
Yeah. No, when I look at it for the association, everybody who lives, within the boundaries of Somerset, including Sierra Canyon, you are all members of the Somerset Association. You also have a sub-association, which you do certain things.
Well, we're going
Do you
to have
want-
the same privileges as everybody?
Absolutely.
Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, that's exactly what I'm saying. Okay. And if this agreement is approved, the existing amenity agreement goes away. It's done. Okay. When does this become effective? It becomes effective as soon as homeowners approve it. The golf course has already started their vote. I understand they'll be finishing that fairly soon, so we'll know if their members approve it. We, the association, at tomorrow night's board meeting, will be voting on how we're going to do the homeowner vote for our side of it. So tomorrow night, if you're interested in that, come to the board meeting, or shortly after tomorrow night, that information will all be available. So that pretty much covers the purchase agreement in terms of what we get. What are we paying? Just as it was in the letter of intent, the purchase price is set at $2.75 million. However, one of the things, and this is a change to the letter of intent, one of the things that we did negotiate was, at the time we did the letter of intent, none of us imagined it would take this long to get to a signed agreement. Okay, so the letter of intent, you'll see words in there that basically say, we'll continue making the payments under the other agreement in June, but not after June. Well, the problem here is that legally this contract's not effective because it hasn't been voted on, which means legally the other contract is still in place. So any agreements we have in this contract about that one don't apply yet. So what we did is we went back and we said, okay, we need to do something about that. And what we negotiated is anything that the Somerset Association pays to the country club after June 30th, which is when we thought we would have this, or we were hoping we would have this wrapped up, gets a credit. We get a credit at closing for any payments that we make under the original agreement from here on, from June 30th, which is already passed. So everything else, we're going to get a credit back. The other thing that's a big change from what the previous agreement is that under this agreement, we, the association, have no ongoing financial responsibility. We're not making monthly payments. We're not doing anything else. We tried very hard to structure this deal such that it would keep us and the country club separate. They have their business to run, and we hope they run it successfully. We don't want to be dragged into that. They don't want us to be dragged into that. So, and that's one of the reasons, when you ask, why are they keeping that one piece of land? Well, because that was always going to be their clubhouse site, and in our discussions, the Somerset representatives who were involved in these negotiations said, we want to have an absolutely clean break. We do not want to have joint use and agreements about what gets built, because that's going to pull us into being responsible for some of that stuff. And that's why we chose to do this the way we have.
But you just said there was going to be an ongoing $12 a month assessment?
That goes away. That's what it is right now. It was, under the current contract, if you look at the original contract, it should be.
Reduced to 15 as well.
Right, exactly, yeah. But from June 30th on, anything we pay under that $12, assuming this deal closes, we get a credit at closing for that amount.
The SOA was not a sovereign entity, I understand, a couple of years ago. Are you sovereign now?
Oh yeah, we're very solid. We've got very strong, well, we'll get into that in a minute when we talk about how we're going to pay for this.
Very sovereign.
Right, well, we'll ask the treasurer and he will tell us. Where will the money come from? Okay, gets right to your question. Okay, we are planning to take out a loan to do this. We made that decision very consciously because this deal, if you all approve it, will have very long-term benefits for the Somerset community. People who don't live here now will benefit from it when they move in at points in the future. The community is still growing. We still have roughly 1,000 homes to be built before Somerset is kind of built out. So one of the reasons we decided to go with a loan is that shares the cost with the people who will benefit from it in the future. It's not just the current homeowners that paid for this and all the future homeowners get a free ride. Okay, they're going to help pay for this. Okay. A question that comes up a lot is what happens if the payments aren't made or whatever the case? Will we lose the property? No. The property is not being pledged as security for the loan.
So where does the money that pays the loan back come from?
Okay. Good question.
You and me.
Okay.
Is that by-
Right now, built into your assessments, built into everybody's assessment is the $15 a month per unit per month for the amenities, okay? And I'll give you the short version, and I'm going to ask Ray to answer any more detailed questions. He's the guy that's been negotiating with banks and talking to them and finding out, what they're willing to do. Debt service based on the commitments that Ray has got from banks, will come to roughly $9 a month, based on current number of units. And as we keep adding units, there's obviously more money there. We also have done a reserve study to look at if this deal happens, both if the country club is there and they're running, all that stuff, because they've got some pretty substantial obligations for maintenance or repair for the stuff that we're leasing back to them. We said, what are our reserve responsibilities for that, in that scenario, and what are our reserve responsibilities if we get all the land back at some point? And I forgot, Ray, what's the number per month or kind of on that equivalent basis for the reserves?
For full responsibility, it's about 30,000 a year.
So that's about $1 a month. That's what it works out, a little bit less than $1 a month on people's assessment. So basically, right now, what we're anticipating is we can make the payments on the loan and make the required reserve contributions for about $10 a month, and $15 is already built into the assessment. So this deal, if approved, will not cause assessments to go up. Okay? That's how we're going to pay for it. We're basically going to use the money that's already in there that's been paying for the amenities under the original deal, and we're going to apply that to pay for this deal.
So how are you gonna guarantee our assessments are not ever gonna go up?
Well, I didn't say they would never go up. They can go up for all kinds of reasons. What I'm telling you is they're not going to go up because of this loan. Or, no. That $15, as long as we don't, without, what I'm saying is this, without increasing your assessments from what they are today, we can pay for this until it's paid off.
So you're basically taking the $12 that we already are paying and saying now that that's
Right.
going there, that's going to.
Right. Right. So in that sense, that this can be fully paid for. And in fact, as more houses are built in Somerset and more houses are sold, the amount of contribution per house starts going down. Okay, because the loan payments are fixed. We're not taking out a variable loan or any of that kind of stuff. So the loan payments are fixed. And so that even means that in the future, there's potential for reducing assessments, based on what these costs are.
What's the term? Like,
What's the term?
It's 15 years.
15 years.
5%.
5%. No, what they do with associations is they look at the financial strength of the association. They look at our assessments. They look at our delinquency rates. They look at our reserves. And the, what is it, a UCC document? You want to explain this? Okay, this is his area, so.
Well, I'm Ray Lee. I guess Tony's been referring to me. I'm the treasurer for the Somerset Owners Association. I guess even to back up slightly, about a month before the letter of intent was signed in November of last year, I started contacting banks about potential financing options for this type of transaction. I actually contacted 3 banks that basically had divisions or departments that specialize in lending monies to HOAs around the nation. They have a list of questions that they ask. Tony mentioned some of them. How many units do you have? What's your delinquency rate? What is the ratio between renters and actual physical owners that you have residing in your association? So we provided them with all of that information at that particular point in time. Based on that preliminary, I'm going to call it application information that we submitted, all 3 banks came back and said, yes, we are willing to lend you the full amount of the purchase price for this transaction. The banks were very specific. In one case, they're not lending. They don't want to lend for a golf course. But when they saw what the letter of intent was, what the deal was, they understood that we're buying physical assets. We're buying land. We're buying the water rights. We're buying the water facilities. All 3 banks do not extend terms beyond 15 years. So this is a 15-year term, 5%. You can say that's roughly they're getting a margin based on there's a 5-year T-bill rate. Currently it's around probably 1 3/4, I should say. It changes, but they get a margin. They're going to make some money on lending money to the SOA itself. So yes, Tony is correct. Our loan repayment is approximately $8 to $9 per unit. That's compared with about the $12 per unit that we pay today. So the Budget and Finance Committee has been, we've actually met about 3 different times now, working on the budget for next year. We're not finalized. There's some preliminary numbers that we've got in there, but we are working on the budget for the entire association. And on a preliminary basis, yes, we are looking at a reduction in the common area assessments, but that's not finalized yet because there's some key parts in our estimates that haven't come back to us. We haven't received a full updated reserve study. Yes, we did have the reserve consultant come out mid-year this year and give us a full assessment on the golf course property itself that we would be acquiring, which they did. They sent out 2 of their assessors. They went through the property, they looked at the condition, and they gave us an estimate in terms of their estimate, their best guess, as to how much we would have to set aside to replace, maintain the physical assets that we are acquiring. So this UCC filing, the bank secured the loan with the UCC file, which is a Uniform Commercial Code file. It's a standard form. When I was working, I ran, let's say, the accounting department. I actually ran the credit department and collections department. So I know what those are. I, in effect, or my group, had the decision-making power to extend credit to customers or to withdraw credit from customers. The association today has UCC filings against it today. Those are for leased equipment. We have Xerox. Even here in Sierra Canyon, we have Xerox machine. Typically, those Xerox machine vendors will file a UCC filing. We have gym equipment that we lease. Again, there's a UCC filing. So how does the bank look at, let's say, our overall exposure in terms of leverage? As I said, this is roughly $8 per unit in terms of 2,550 units. So that's roughly $8 per unit in terms of debt service, let's call it that, for the next 15 years. Today, let's say, the average Somerset assessment in total, I'm talking in total, is roughly around $160. So that's roughly 5% of the total revenue stream is servicing this $2.7 million debt. Okay. The association has other debt. When the developer put in Somerset, we actually are paying for the Canyon Eye golf course. The non-Sierra Canyon residents of Somerset are actually paying for the club at Town Center. There is debt that basically goes back to the developer. That debt, it's a little bit less than $2.7 million, but let's just round it off. That's another 5% in debt service. So our overall debt service is approximately, I'm going to say 10% of the overall assessments that Somerset residents pay. So are we over leveraging ourselves? Probably not in terms of a banker looking at our financial situation. Can we afford to do that? From a business standpoint, I would say yes. So I'm going to turn this back.
Nate?
Yes.
Can we afford to maintain it after we do it? The water pumping station, the
Yeah.
We're gonna talk a little bit about who has to pay what
Right.
with regard to that here in a minute.
Okay.
So, as far as the water facilities themselves, there's not only the pumps at the Truckee River that come up to the Canyonine Lake or pond, if you want to call it that. There's also a well here in Del Webb. There's a big well here in Del Webb. And there's also a well at the Country Club parking lot area itself. There's two water wells that have been drilled. Those wells are operating today. As I said, the reserve consultant actually looked at those pumping facilities. They obviously can't look, let's say, in the pipes that go under the highway, under 80, as well as throughout the community. But based on the age, their estimate, I'm going to call it engineering, construction, lives in terms of what the life of these pipes are. And they're double lined, they're sleeve pipes, so they're not just a single pipe. They think that the pipes will last pretty much a very long time, at least beyond the 30-year life, the 30-year horizon that a reserve consultant looks at life of pipes. And the pumping stations. So any of the replaceable spar parts that need to be replaced within 30 years, they've made an estimate of what that would cost and built it into this reserve analysis that they've provided to us.
And remember that any of that say if a pump breaks or something, in the first 4 years, we've got 100% warranty on that. And then we have, you'll see in the lease and in particularly the water facilities agreement, we've got agreements on how or who pays for what for anything that happens after the 4 years. So I'll get into that in a minute.
Does that home have a balloon payment?
Nope. It's not, there's no balloon payment involved, right, Greg? No, no.
So after 15 years?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is what we've just been talking about. So that basically says the same thing. Now, remember, even though right now we're only paying the country club $12 a year per month, what's actually in the assessment that you're already paying is $15, because the assessment didn't go down when we negotiated that change kind of, outside of the budget cycle. So there's a little bit of a cushion there too. So I think that from the point of view of being able to pay for this deal without anything extraordinary happening, I think we're in pretty good shape from everything that we can see about this deal. We'll talk about the lease now. And again, what we're doing is as soon as the purchase, well, at the closing, simultaneously, as soon as the purchase closes, it's leased back. Most of the property is leased back directly to them. The only thing they're allowed to do with it is operate a private member-based country club. Okay, they're not allowed to convert it into a public type course. They're not allowed to change the use of it from a golf course. And they're not allowed, this is a question somebody asked, they are not allowed to assign the lease or, somehow sublease it without our express permission, which we can withhold for any reason. And again,
The market value lease
no,
portion of it?
no. And the reason is, we don't want to take on normal landlord responsibilities, okay, which would end up costing homeowners potentially a lot more. Well, let me get to it. We're getting to that stuff. We are charging them, basically, the base payment is $2,200 a year with some escalation, and there are provisions for other costs and stuff depending on what happens. Okay?
$2,200 for 249 acres.
Yeah, but you're buying it for $2.75 million, including 400 acre-feet of water, which is worth close to that on its own. Okay?
I have
And
access to it.
How did you determine that price?
negotiation. I mean, we ultimately got to a
How
point
do you
where
know it's worth 2.75 and that, did you do?
we looked at a lot of information on what golf courses have sold for here in Reno. Well, we've looked at the golf courses that have gone bankrupt, we've looked at Northgate, we've looked at a lot of stuff like that. We're still doing work on that, which we'll make available when we get it. But the bottom line is, it was the price at which we can do a deal. And you know what's really great about that is you get to decide. If you don't think it's worth it, all you have to do is vote no. Okay?
So as an association, if we own the land, are we liable for accidents or things that happen?
They have to carry full insurance that's satisfactory to us and names us as a co-insured. They have to pay that cost. Okay? Now, in the real world, who's going to get sued? Lawyers are going to come after everybody, but we've got indemnification from the golf course. I think it's what, a $10 million policy currently, I think, the umbrella liability policy. And we're named as an additional insured, and they're going to have to maintain that kind of insurance. Okay? Again, what we did is, one of the reasons that we agreed on the low rate of rent, I mean, we probably could have negotiated a much higher rate of rent, and then we would have had to pay a lot more to buy this stuff. And we probably would have had to take on some landlord-type responsibilities for repairs and that kind of stuff, okay? We talked about that in various negotiations. That's how we came up with the number that was the highest we were willing to pay and the lowest they were willing to take, and work out all these other agreements, you know, all the other parts, which we'll get to in terms of how they pay for it. But the point here is that in addition to their use is very restricted on what they could do with it, they basically, the way we've worked out this agreement, and it's all laid out in here, if you want to take the time to read it, that basically they pay the full cost to operate, maintain, and do repairs on everything they're leasing back. It does not, we are not obligated to fix anything, okay? The only place where we have a joint deal has to do with the common facility from the Truckee River up here. This is in the water facility agreement, so I'm jumping ahead a little bit. But what we are going to do, what we've agreed there is that for major repairs, if the pipe breaks, if there's a earthquake, the pipe breaks, major repairs will be apportioned between the SOA and the country club based on how much water each entity pumps. So we work out the ratio, you know, to say, okay, if, you know, if depending on the year you look at, the ratio changes somewhat, but in the contract, what we do is we look at the previous year, we look at the total amount of water that was pumped up to Canyon 9, and what happens when water gets to Canyon 9 pond is that that's where the intake is for the watering system for Canyon 9. It sucks it straight out of that pond. And what happens to water of the big golf course is water is sucked out of that pond and moved over to a different pond on the big golf course, and then it's sucked out for water of the big golf course. So all that's measured. So what we'll do is we'll look at the previous year and we'll say, what's the total amount that was pumped for the country club? What's the total amount that was pumped for Canyon 9, which is a much smaller course, obviously. And whatever that ratio was the year before, that's how we're going to split costs to repair the common elements, basically the pipeline and the pump house that's down there. Once you get up here, then the equipment gets a little bit more split. There's a pump house, for example, right there, off the Canyon 9, right down from the clubhouse. But at that point, you can really see which pumps pump to the golf course, the big golf course, which pumps pump to the small golf course.
What's the standard of maintenance? Who determines the standard of maintenance?
It's all written down in here. Basically, what they've got to do is maintain it at its current condition. Okay? So, in other words, if, and this is something that's very different from a typical landlord type agreement, where
How is that condition documented?
it's in the contract. I mean, it's all laid out right there. So, you know, what's different is we're not responsible if even though, for example, they've got a pump, there's a pump house on, I think it's the 14th hole, next to the lake on the 14th hole, on the big golf course. That's the main pump house that waters the big golf course. Okay, technically, we will own that property and lease it back to them. Okay? During any time that that lease is in effect, let's say one of those pumps breaks. We're not talking about normal annual maintenance or anything like that. Let's say the thing just breaks. Okay? They've got to fix it. They got to get it back to the condition that, you know, is the workable condition and stuff like that. We don't contribute to that. So, I mean, that's very different. That's another reason why we wanted to go with the low lease to keep our objective from the association's point of view was, look, we're not making money off that land right now anyway. So we're not losing revenue by that. What we want to do is not cause more expenditures on the part of association homeowners because of being responsible for fixing things like broken pumps. Okay, so that's what we're trying to balance out.
Are you gonna get into what happens if there's a default on this loan?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. Let me finish with the yeah.
Recently, you know?
Okay.
The whole country.
Well, that's right. No, I mean, there are a number, one of the things that took us a long time to work out are in fact the default conditions, which we've laid out in here for various kinds of defaults. For example, okay, one of the things that's the biggest concern, you know, from the association's point of view, we want to keep that land green. We're not particularly concerned whether it's a golf course or a park or whatever. That's a decision that's further down the road from the homeowners. But we want to keep it green. We want to have a fire break. We want to, you know, control dust, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so obviously the condition of the grass becomes very important. Okay, one of the problems with the current agreement, I mean, if you look at the current agreements, as part of the amenity deal, okay, the association had the right, if the golf course goes bankrupt or is about to go bankrupt, we've got the right to buy it for $1. Okay, the reality is this. First of all, if they go bankrupt, there's no bankruptcy judge in the world that's going to allow us to buy it for $1 when there are creditors out there. And bankruptcy judges pretty much can do whatever they want. And we looked into this at great length with our attorneys and stuff like that. But the thing is that by the time you get through that process and go through all the hearings and say, do we have the right to buy and stuff, the grass is going to be dead. It's going to be unrecoverable, just like Northgate is. Okay? So that's a big issue. You can't wait a long time to take control and still be able to keep it viable, certainly as a golf course or even as just being green space before you have to like rip everything out and spend lots and lots of money to make it green again. So we have one of the default terms is if they are not maintaining the golf course, and we've got standards for maintenance and stuff that are in the contract, we can step in 45 days, cancel the lease, and take over.
And the other part is, what's going to happen if the bank, can the bank actually sell this loan to somebody else if they want to?
Well, we don't, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we don't have any control over what the bank can do with it, but as we said earlier, the bank does not have any security from the land. So they cannot come back under any conditions and say, we're going to foreclose on that. Okay, so that's part of what Ray was talking about, that, you know, as long as we have assessments and make payments, that's it. They will not have any security in the land. They don't want security in the land, actually.
They'll have security on a revenue stream though, correct?
Well, as Ray said, we're using the same method that we use to lease copiers right now. Yeah, what we're saying is we're going to pledge part of our assessments to make the payments, which is what we do for every bill we have. You know, whether we do it with a UCC form or not, the fact is we're paying our bills. That's right. I mean, that's what it is. It's a call on the assessment stream, not a call on the land. And as Ray said, we're talking about a pretty small percentage of the total assessments. So let me let's go through some of this, because this is some of the key points for that. We talked about $2,200 a year with some escalation. The term of the lease is 50 years with 2 options to extend for 20 years each. So it's potentially 90 years. And the way we're looking at that is the longer they're there, the more we have the golf course without us having to pay anything to maintain it. And if they're not there, if something happens to them, then as we've said in the previous presentations and stuff like that, I would expect that whenever that happened, if it was to happen, that homeowners would be able to decide, do they want to keep it as a community golf course, do they want to turn it into a park? What is it they want to do, make more trails? But the point is, we expect it to be green space, and we have the water to keep it green, regardless. So, if it stops being a golf course, we can terminate the lease after 45 consecutive days. Also, we have we talked about earlier, right of first refusal to buy the piece of land that they're keeping. We actually also have a first option to purchase that if the lease terminates. Okay, and there are some things about that. For example, obviously when you're doing these long-term things, you're trying to anticipate different scenarios. If if, for example, for whatever reason, the country club decides they can't don't want to keep the golf course, but they want to have a private members club in their clubhouse for the restaurant or poker games or whatever, as long as it's the same member-owned group, they can do that. As soon as it stops being that, we have an option to purchase that lot. And if we can't agree on the price, you'll see in the contract, it's all laid out that we've got a mechanism where they get appraisers, we get appraisers, the appraisers appoint appraisers, and you come up with the price, and that's the fair price for that land. Now, we don't have to take it, but we have the first option. So what we've done is what we've tried to do with this whole deal is build in incentives for the country club to take its absolute best shot to be successful. But if they're not, we've also tried to build in things so that the Somerset community has the maximum protection for anything that might happen if the country club goes away. We will own the land, we'll own the water, we'll have the rights to make decisions about what to do with all that. And this option is separate from the right of first refusal that I talked about earlier. Okay, the water facility agreement. As I said, this mostly talks about the responsibilities for operating the water system and who pays for what in terms of maintenance and so forth. It runs concurrently with the lease. If the lease ends, the water facility agreement also ends. Okay? What we have agreed at this point is that the country club folks will continue to operate the facilities. They've been operating them ever since they were built. They've been operating them for us, for Canyon 9, ever since they've been there. At no charge to the SOA. Okay? There are things in there that say, they've got to operate it within our reasonable requests for what we need and that kind of stuff. And if they don't, we've got options. You can see in there, we've got options that we can take over the operations. Now, if we take over the operations, we obviously have to accommodate them. They have to pay $1,000 a month for that. But if they're operating for us, we're not paying anything extra. So, this is really key, and this gets to a lot of the questions that have come up, that as long as the lease is in effect, which means the water facilities in effect, water facilities agreements in effect, the country club is responsible for all the maintenance and repair costs on the water infrastructure on the leased premises. So that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier. The pump breaks that waters the golf course, they've got to fix it. We do not, as the landlord, we do not have to come in and fix it. Okay? As I also said, the only place we've got a shared maintenance thing going on is with the line down to the Truckee River. And we'll apportion those costs based on the relative use of the water. And again, if this is approved, the existing water sharing agreement terminates. And you can see all the details in there. There's a lot more details in the contract that tried to cover like all the different pieces of it. So you can see that in there, who does what with wells and all that kind of stuff. We think this deal, we the board think this deal is strategically important to Somerset. Okay, we are not doing this to buy a golf course. We are not going to operate a golf course. If the land reverts to us and the homeowners want the then board, presumably it's going to be, some board in the future. If the homeowners want to operate a golf course, that would be an option that would have to be worked out at that point in time. Okay, we have made no commitments for the association to have any role in operating or maintaining the golf course. That's not what we're trying to do here.
What's the taxable liability?
Well, we are expecting, that's a good question, based on the initial decisions with our attorney and with some other people, the association's common land is not subject to property tax here. We expect that when we do this deal, that's what the assessor will say for that land too. However, it's up to the assessor. If he says, no, we're going to pay property tax, it goes into the lease cost. It's added to the lease cost. Okay, so that's part of the agreement as well.
What is an acre foot of water since we have 411?
What we've been using as an average number in our calculations that we got from a water surveyor is about $6,000 to buy an acre foot of water. Not all acre feet of water are the same. If you look at all the various permits, some will be higher, some will be lower. I was told just like the last week or so, it was one of the golf courses here in the Reno area just bought
Lake Ridge.
Lake Ridge. Who said that? Who said
I
that?
did.
Jeffrey, there he is. I
I
didn't
gave
see
you
you back there.
the
Yes. And it was what,
$5,400?
$5,400? Is that right?
Yes.
So they paid $5,400 just recently.
Well, if your round ballpark figures at $6,000
Yeah.
an acre foot, if you're purchasing this for $2.75 million, a lot of the water is in that value of that.
Absolutely.
But the water has to go to watering the golf course.
Right, but it's there if anything ever happens to the golf course, though, it is our water. And so, again,
It's not for drinking, it's not something we.
no,
But you could sell.
yeah, you could presumably. But, we would hope that it's kept to keep the space green. But again, you're absolutely right. You look at it that way, and that's, roughly speaking, $2.5 million right there. That's another reason why the lease is $2,200 a year, okay? Because we were trying to get the assets at as low a price as possible.
Tony, a few things that occur to me. The bank looked at this deal and it was good enough for them to give us money. That, to me, that says a lot.
Okay, good point.
The lease is a triple net, essentially a triple net lease. We have no obligation to it, no expense to it. We don't make a lot of money. We may make some money on the appreciation of the property down the road. So, to me, that's a good deal. If we don't do the deal and things go south on the golf course, and by not doing the deal, we don't buy the developer's reversion back, we won't have any say in what happens with what he does with the property.
That's
So
absolutely right.
having the reversion, again, all of this is part of the package that gets us to where we are for the entire entity.
Yeah,
Jerry takes pieces out of it and say, well, we could have done better on the lease, and we could have done better over here, because one thing weighs against the other.
I agree. That's exactly correct. And as we've said before, and we made this very clear very early in these discussions when we started talking about this kind of a structure, If the reverter right wasn't part of it, there was no deal, period. Because without that, everything's subject to going back to the developer. And in fact, it's actually even a little bit worse because the way the developer's reverter is written, he doesn't get the stuff back until after it stops being a golf course for 12 months. In 12 months, it's dead. Okay, so.
Little aside too, I worked for the assessor's office in Reno, Washington for 30 years. Somebody's gonna pay taxes on the golf course. So that you got it covered so that they're gonna pay them, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, what we, the theory, but it's up to the assessor, and we do have it covered. If property, we're gonna try our best to get it in as tax-free association common area. Okay?
Well, it's not tax-free, it's simply divided up among the 2550 homes.
Right, that's the theory. The reason that the association, as I've been told, the reason that we're not taxed on the common area is the assessor views it that the common area, the amenities, and all that other kind of good stuff increase property values. They collect taxes from a higher home tax rate, which means they don't need to collect tax directly from the property because it's double taxation. But
the difference is now you're gonna have a lease.
I know, and we've been told it could go either way. That so far the indications are we think it might. We hope we can get it in tax-free, but we do have it covered in the contract. It's in there.
I have a question, just want to clarify something. The gentleman in front said we could only use the water rights for a golf course, and you said we're free to sell the water rights for any use.
Okay, now let me explain.
So,
Okay.
do we own the water rights outright?
Yes, we will own the water rights outright.
For any use?
Right now, the way the infrastructure is built, it can only be used to water the golf course. Okay? We'd have to build new infrastructure to get the water anywhere else. Now, if the golf course was to fail, as long as the lease is in place and they're using it, that's what the water's going to be used for. Okay, for both the golf courses, because that's the infrastructure that currently exists. If the golf course was to give up the lease and all that property comes back to us, we could presumably do anything that a homeowners association is legally allowed to do, because there are restrictions on how you treat common area, or common property.
Water rights too.
But we would be able to do anything that you can legally do with that stuff. But depending on what you want to do with it, that would require building more infrastructure. Right now, the water can only be used to water the golf course, because that's the only place the pipes run.
What would be the restrictions on the water rights?
NRS 116, as you all know, has lots of things that it says associations can and cannot do with regard to common elements. Our CCNRs also speak to certain things about that. We would have to abide by those. So I don't know, I haven't looked at trying to sell
That's
them.
not the question, I'm asking a simple question. We have a property right to water rights now.
Right.
People buy and sell water rights, developers, in order to develop and so on. Should we end up owning the water rights in the country club? Can we sell those, say, to a developer who wants to build
Subject
in North
to,
Carolina?
if they come back to us, my question would be, why would we want to? Okay, you'd have to do it subject to all the Nevada laws that deal with selling common elements. And there are a lot of those, Dan. Okay, this is not, Nevada has a lot to say about how associations work and what we can do with common area and what we can't do with common area. So subject to those rules, we'd be able to do anything that we're allowed to do under those laws.
Now, there's a set of restrictions associated with the water rights when they were granted, and you're subject to those restrictions.
Restriction of those as well. That's right.
Well, what restrictions were there when they were granted?
They should look into it.
They have different priorities. For example, right now, the federal water master has reduced the flow out of the Truckee River, and as of the end of July, said nobody can pull water out of the Truckee River for the rest of the season. Okay, water from the Truckee River has a season. It goes from April through September. I think it was the right dates. Okay, but they stopped that early. Now, it turns out, if your water rights originally were granted in 1861 or earlier, you're not subject to the federal water masters. If you've got an 1878 water right, okay, you are subject. So there's all kinds of complications like that.
Has the
Okay.
board researched all that?
We've looked at some of it, we're not experts in this.
Did you
Okay.
ask an expert to look at it?
We're talking to experts right now about doing exactly that.
Will you provide that to the
Tony?
homeowners?
With regard to the water rights, the original quitclaim deed from the developer to the country club talked about 900 acre feet. Your presentation talks about 400.
Right.
And another, what happened to the other 400 acre feet?
We went over this a long time ago in the other presentations. The 900 was based on the developer's request when he filed certain water rights, okay? What happens is the state makes a determination. They tell you, when you file a water claim, the state tells you how much water you can get. Most of that difference is the developer, as I understand from the stuff that I've looked at, filed a water claim for a spring up here in the Peavine Mountains and filed for 700 and some odd acre feet of water per year. The state came back and said, you can have 72.4 acre feet per year. Okay? That's what most of that difference is. If you look at what the state allows under the current water permits, and you add up each permit, you get to that roughly 411 acre feet number. So what we're reporting is what the state allows to take right now. Now, we could buy more water rights. There's a potential you can ask for more water rights out of certain claims when you prove them over time. But right now, what the state is allowing for the country club, for the developer, for anybody who owns those permits, is roughly 411. So that's what we're saying we're buying.
Tony, isn't there 100 acre feet of supplemental rights in there as well?
Yes, that's in addition to the 411.
Yes, and that's for well water, as I understand it.
Yes, my understanding is because if you look at it right now, the association already has 25 acre feet out of the Truckee River, 17 acre feet out of the spring and the Peavine that there's no way to capture. Okay, there's no infrastructure for it right now. But what the supplemental rights do is they say that if you have water rights from the Truckee River and you're not allowed to pull it out, like under the current conditions, that you can pull an extra 100 acre, up to 100 acre feet from your other sources, which are primarily groundwater wells. Okay, you can pull up to an extra 100 acre feet above the permitted amount from those permits. Okay, that's one of the things that we found out about the water permits that the country club has is, and I don't remember off the top of my head the number of permits, but they're very flexible in that they've got permitted various wells that haven't been drilled. And what the state allows them to do under the terms of their permits is, as long as they don't exceed the total for all the permits, they can pull it out of whatever well they want.
They're not limited to the 100 acre feet, they can get it.
Well, no, for example, and I'm just gonna make up numbers right here because I don't have the numbers in front of me, okay? The well down here in Sierra Canyon, okay, it's permitted for a specific amount. Let's say it's permitted for 70 acre feet. I don't remember what that well particularly is, but let's say 70. And let's say they've got, there's another well that's permitted for a number of acre feet that's over by the canyon line that's never been drilled. Let's say that's for 30 acre feet. As long as they, as I understand it, as long as they don't pull more than 100 acre feet total, they can pull all 100 out of Sierra Canyon well. So there are something, I believe, if I'm keeping this straight in my head, I believe there are 5 permitted wells, only 2 have been drilled. And all the water comes out of those 2 for all the permits.
But however many wells they have, they're limited to pulling 100 acre feet.
No. That's the 100 acre feet is the supplemental number. That's how much you're allowed to go over your permits in aggregate if you're not allowed to draw that 100 acre feet out of the Truckee River. Okay, it's kind of like a extra flexibility that says we've got 411 acre feet. Part of that 411 comes out of the Truckee River. If conditions like right now, where the water master says you can't pull it out of the Truckee River, they've got the flexibility on these permits to pull up to 100 more acre feet above the permitted from the other wells. So it's kind of a makeup for not being able to get all your water on the grid. I saw a hand way in the back at one point.
Just to clarify a point, in selling the water rights, if for some reason we got the water rights back, we're looking to sell them, my understanding is the board would be under the same restrictions as trying to sell any other asset.
Absolutely.
So it's exactly the same,
Right.
whether we're selling a building
Yeah.
or water rights.
Or
There's
common
certain-
area, or
there's
if we
certain-
wanted to sell any common area.
So it's
That's right.
clarify Dan's point.
Yeah, I mean, that is my understanding of the legal interpretation, the legal situation. My question is, why would we want to if we want to keep this
I
thing straight?
understand, I understand.
Yeah.
There's a question
But
over
anyway,
here.
but everyone see.
Steele, great job on voting yes.
This is almost, this is it, this is the last slide. This is the last slide. The whole point of this deal, we've said many times before, but the reason we got into this deal and took this opportunity is to guarantee the integrity of Somerset, so that all this land that runs all through here, if something happens in the country club, we will own it outright. It will not be sold to other builders. We can decide what we do with it, if we keep it green or whatever. I mean, I personally would hope it stays green, but the fact is, the association will be able to decide. It will not be the developer, and it will not be at default because the developer took the water somewhere else. And the key again is the reverter rights will be canceled. He has already signed that contract. So as soon as a homeowner vote happens, if it's approved, that goes in, that is a done deal, and at closing, that will be recorded. His reverter rights are gone. So we will never have the issues that they had at Northgate and DeAndrea and so forth.
So what
Tony,
happened
you got
to
two
the last,
questions over here.
What's that?
what happened to the last vote that we voted about 6 months ago?
It's still there. It hasn't been decided one way or the other.
So,
It's not
Different issue.
to do this, we're gonna have another vote, right?
The vote, here's what I expect to have happen, okay? And it's not, being the president doesn't give me any extra power. This has to be voted on by the board. Tomorrow night, we will discuss and hopefully make some decisions about how the vote on this particular deal will be held, and we will announce that. I would expect that, at least I would hope, that means that somewhere very close to the beginning of September, as soon as we can get all the paperwork ready and all that kind of stuff, we're going to start the vote on this deal.
And what's the time limit going to be to vote?
Well,
So we can finally.
no, actually, that's not true. No. Well, I don't even know what your way is, so maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But no, it's not. What it is, we've actually had this discussion a couple times now with the ombudsman. And the ombudsman's very clear on her attitude is that if there is a vote, there is no reason to assume the people who didn't vote will either all vote yes or all vote no. So what she encourages homeowners associations to do is follow a vote until either enough people vote to approve it or enough people vote against it to block it.
But that's not Robert's Rules of Order, which you're obligated to follow.
Well, no, actually, that's, if you look at the CCNRs on Robert's Rules of Order, we're allowed to adopt our own
But you've
version.
adopted Robert's Rules of Order.
No, we've adopted a version, okay? No, seriously, no, look at the thing. We do not use the full Robert's Rules of Order. We don't, we never.
Tony, you got some questions over here.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about, John, yeah.
Tony, on the, I think you said the Somerset Golf and Country Club folks were now voting on this deal?
That's my understanding.
Can you tell us what percentage of those folks are going to be required for them to agree?
I don't know what their rules on that. Pat, do you want to?
We are, well, I don't mind telling you, it'll be more than 50%.
No, what's your requirement? to pass it, is it 50%?
Majority.
Majority of all equity members is what the requirement is.
So 50% plus one?
Correct. Yeah. Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I just, nice presentation,
Thank you.
right? Of course, your intent is to make it a nice presentation. But,
Now, my intent is actually to get you guys to actually look at this and decide for yourselves.
yeah,
That's what we really want.
okay, deciding for yourself, that follows up my question. Okay, you make some good points, but I think there are some learned folks that maybe disagree with some of the points that you're making.
That's fine.
Some being misleading, I think, and whatnot. So what forum, what opportunity will be provided to people or a forum that may want to present a presentation as to why they don't think it's necessarily strategically advantageous to approve this agreement? What kind of a forum will you have for, you might say, opposition viewpoints?
Well, if you want to hold a presentation, go for it. You know, if you want to do a presentation, set it up, tell people when you're going to do it. You're free to do that.
Will you broadcast it through your normal means, like you do when you advertise this one?
Why should they? There's a law required.
I guess what I'm saying is, would you send out an email to everybody? like
Well,
you
Jim,
sent out for-
you have mailed stuff out to everybody for your campaigns and stuff. Why don't you do that?
We don't have emails.
You have.
I didn't say you won't. No, you mail stuff. I've seen it. I've got it. You know exactly what the rules are with regard to this. Okay, with regard to equal space, we've gone through that. You filed a complaint about it. You know exactly what the rules are. Okay, so if you would like to do it, go for it.
Tony, you're required by the NRS laws to give equal time and equal space
For an official publication that is sent to all members,
And that's
look
what
at the
this is.
definition.
That's what this is.
Yes.
This is an official publication.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It's defined in NRS. Go look at it. They define official, well, I suspect you do. This would not come under the NRS definition. Now, we have put this on the website.
Oh,
Okay, so that comes under the NRS definition if you like. So, there you go.
So opposition people will have equal access to publish their point of view on your.
They will have exactly the rights that the law gives them. Okay?
But what I'm asking is it your interpretation that the opposition will have the right to use the same email list that the board is using?
No, they don't have that right. There's no requirement to do that.
On the website?
They can under the certain conditions, yes. Depending on whether it's an organization or an individual.
So what you're saying is the board sends out an email and does not consider that an official publication?
It may or may not be. Look at the definition of official publications. It's defined in NRS. Okay? And the thing that always gets me about this kind of stuff, okay, is that there's no shortage of quoting NRS to us when you want us to follow those rules, but there's also a perfect willingness to ignore the rules when it's to somebody's advantage. Okay? We are stuck with following the rules, and that's what we're going to do.
You know, one of the things when you want to follow the rules, I've been around this world for a long time. And in November, I vote for a candidate for back in Washington, D.C. And on Wednesday, it's all over with. But this is the first time in my experience that I've ever seen an election, and it went from, I'm going to guess, last September, we're going to
November.
last November, and we're going to go up for a year.
Yeah. Well, no, we won't go for a year.
Okay, but for my
no.
round ballpark figures, and you've used round ballpark.
Yeah.
In Sierra Canyon, I've heard more discussion, not whether we're going to have a golf course or not have a golf course, is on a stupid election that we've extended it till we get my way or the highway.
No.
And, well, I know, you're going by this amount, but that is what a lot of the people here are. So everything else, we're dubious.
I mean, and that's why, all you can do is give you the information. You can look at it, you can decide whether it's good for Somerset or not. You can decide whether it's good for, homeowners and home values or whatever the risks you think there are if we don't do this deal and whatever happens to the land. That's why you get the vote on it. It is totally up to you. Okay, all we can do is we've negotiated what we think is the best deal we could get.
One question.
There's some hands
Before
back
straighten
here.
the air up.
There's
Is
people
this-
waiting back here.
This deal is separate from the water and CCNR?
Yeah.
Or is this only possible if the CCNR vote passes?
No. This will
This
happen
will be a
anyway.
separate vote. So we vote on this regardless of what happens with the CCNR.
Well, that's, right now, the CCNR vote isn't settled, so that's exactly what we're gonna do.
Does it have to be settled first?
No, it doesn't have to.
I just want to ask, how is the golf course doing right now? I heard that it wasn't really doing well financially.
Well, I don't have all the details on that, but I can tell you from sitting in on some of their board meetings, they've made what seemed to me to be very significant strides in attracting more equity members. When I first started going to some of those meetings,
But what are they doing financially?
well, no, as I understand, they've made money the last 2 years. They're almost at 200 equity members now, which when I first started going to meetings, they had like 113 or something like that. I think those numbers are about right, and that's what I can tell you about it.
If they're making money, why are we subsidizing them?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
subsidizing, we're
If you want to think about that. That's exactly why we're trying to do this deal, is to get rid of that contract.
You got $500,000 in the budget this year we're giving to them.
Yeah.
Well,
If they're making money, they don't need it, right?
You can't make one with only 200 members. They need 450 members.
look, this meeting is not about discussing the finances of the golf club.
Sure it is. Absolutely it is.
Wait a second, one guy at a time. Pete's sakes.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
I have a specific question about the contract as it exists today, and you're proposing.
Are you talking about the original contract or this contract?
The original contract, and you're proposing a small change to this term under the new contract. And under the existing contract, all owners within Somerset Owners Association are allowed to bring 2 foursomes per year and play at a reduced rate at Somerset Golf Course. And that number is going to go up to 4 per year. But the way that rule is enforced is if I bring my wife down there and we play as a twosome, we just lost both of our foursomes for the year. And that rule has been enforced. I've complained to SOA about it. And SOA has basically said, hey, the country club can do whatever they want. They can interpret the contract however they wish. Under those conditions, how can we give SOA any credibility?
Well, that's totally up to you. As far as I'm concerned, this deal, well, no, it is. I'm not gonna try to convince you into something if you've already got your mind made up about
The
it.
contract says we're allowed 4 foursomes. Somerset Golf Association says you can only have 1 owner per foursome. And if you have 2 owners, we just used up 2 foursomes.
The contract that we had is the contract we were given, okay? We're trying to get rid of that contract.
And the terminology in the new contract is the same, and you're interpreting it to mean, yes, they're allowed to say you can only have 1 owner per foursome, even though the contract says nothing to that effect.
I played under that rule and it did not work that way for us. It was basically an account where my wife and I played, we both got picked 1 count, but we each had 1 more play to play. In other words, I couldn't say I'm only counting against me and my wife said yes. That's how they explained it to me. Elizabeth's wife had also, but we still had 1 more player to play. But I want to say one thing on, is it this vote, getting into some details, I think anybody can interpret different ways. But basically, we're voting to where we have control of that station. That's what I heard at the very beginning, even from the Somerset United people. We never want to see it green, but yet, I don't know, I don't know that I can.
That's never been said.
We never
said
that, excuse me.
we did not want to see it green.
Okay, I'm sorry, but hold on. So now I question that by hearing some of this, but we have control, we get control of the space. And that's what this boils down to, that our money that we're spending right now, it's just renting something that goes away whenever that ends. In other words, we don't own anything, the developer has control. What you're voting on now is to change that to where we have control. using the money much more efficiently. And we need to think about it. The
That's what
agreement-
this whole thing is
it's
about. I mean, it's
it's-
really about
you
the
need to look at the
long-term
agreement in its
security
total,
of
and not just
Somerset.
one piece, saying, well, that's not enough money to charge them for a lease. Look at the whole agreement, and what you're getting at.
The golf club is using SOA's borrowing power. That's what it adds up to.
Well, I don't agree. I mean, we're getting actual assets, okay? We have actual assets that affect the values in this community. We can guarantee that that will stay green for as long as Somerset's around. And I would venture to guess that Somerset will be around a lot longer than the country club will be around. You know, whether that's 100 years or 150 years or 90 years or whatever, okay? That's what this is about. It's about getting the reverter rights dropped so that we don't have some development or stuff that we don't want to have happen.
No question.
Well, that's what this is about. You know, you worked out, you know, right here just a little while ago, the value of the water rights. We can keep it green. So if that's, you know, if that's not worth it, then don't vote for it. But that's what this thing is really about. It's a way to get actual assets and control for Somerset for the long term.
Tony, like Jim, I compliment you on your presentation.
Thank you.
My concern is we're obligating ourselves here for a certain amount. We're pledging our money. Those bills aren't paid. We don't pay our bills or pay the dues. It's a lien on all our homes. Taking that together with the no, if we don't pay our HOA dues, it creates a lien on our home, right?
Yes.
So if it goes up, no, but back to my question. Take this amount of money we're spending, we're obligating our dues for, and we take the provision under the new CC&Rs where the board can make $500,000 decisions at will without conferring to us, or without a vote from us. In the aggregate, we're looking at a situation where our dues could go up significantly, 40, 50.
See, I don't think that's accurate, okay? And the reason is this. You can't look at that. Hold on, let me now respond, okay?
Go ahead.
That you gotta look at that in the context of all the other things that go on, okay? We've got a budgeting process. If, as you say, if we get into this burdensome loans, we can't afford to pay another $500,000 here and there and everywhere else. The other question is, what's there for sale that you could buy that around here? Okay, basically, this is the land that's inside Somerset. Somerset's not allowed, the association's not allowed to go down and buy, I don't know, buy property in the middle of Reno to start a casino. We're not allowed to do that.
We should.
Okay. So, you know, when you look around, basically, this is the only land that's around that affects us. So I'm not sure what, you know, everything else that people are worried about is going to be, but it's, you know, it's subject to our budgeting, it's subject to our normal assessment setting processes. You guys have a say in all that.
Well, I would be in favor of requiring this, but not when I'm looking at the potential liability increase of decisions made without consulting me at $500,000 a clip.
Right now, there are no limits for those
This
decisions,
vote.
okay?
They're two different things.
So those are two different things. We can talk about that forever, but, you know, that is the idea of we can go out and do a dozen $500,000 deals is kind of ludicrous because we don't have the kind of financial power to do that. You know, there are limits on this. It's not just one section of the CC&Rs that apply. It's all the CC&Rs and all of NRS 116 that apply. And you gotta look at all those.
Jeffrey's got
Wait a minute,
it.
hold on. Jeff's had his hand very patiently up there for a long time. So
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Tony. I wanted to echo, I don't know the gentleman over there who spoke standing up against the windows, but the one thing which I've thought about when I've been going through all this, I was the person who provided all the comps on the different golf courses which was put onto the Somerset website. I've also been looking at the water rights issue, and if you just look at the water rights issue alone, this deal kind of makes sense. You know, from that perspective, just controlling the water rights makes this deal worth doing. I don't agree on the CC&Rs, but I do think that this deal makes sense.
Thank you, Jerry.
Amen.
Just another point on that, and this is, I think, Jeffrey, you're aware of this as well. Look at Northgate. When Northgate was, there was a deal worked out between some of the homeowners in the city to buy that to keep this parkway. Okay, it's a dead golf course. That was appraised, my understanding from newspaper stuff at the time, that was appraised. And the important thing is, it's almost exactly the same size as our golf course in terms of acreage. It's really close. That was appraised without water rights at $2.8 million. And that was in, what, 2009, 2010, so the property values were a lot lower at that point. But, you know, then you say, you got the value of the water, you got the value of the reverter right. You guys can decide.
I think I'm a little bit confused. After this agreement goes into effect, will not members have any access to the country club or the golf course? Will we have our 4 rounds at a reduced rate? Or
Yeah. Yes. You'll have 4 rounds at a reduced, at whatever the going rate is. I don't know how they, because from what I saw, that even right now with the 2 rounds, there's like different rates depending on when you play and whatever. So whatever those rules are, but you'll have 4 rounds instead of 2. You'll have access. You'll have free access. Yeah. You'll have free access to the back of the driving range for as much as you want to use it. You can now use the front if you want to hit off the grass. That costs $10 a day for unlimited balls, but that's something that you don't have access to right now. You'll still have access to the restaurant. You'll still have access to the bocce ball. I'm probably forgetting something, but it's all on the presentation that's on the website. Excuse me, over there. Yeah.
I just have one question. It's not really a question, but you're trying to sell this to us as a good deal. It's the second presentation I've been to. I asked the first time about an appraisal.
Yeah.
I asked this time about an appraisal. If an appraisal was done, you can ask for to be included in it what the value of the reversion rights were, what's the value of the water rights, and if they came out and said $10 million,
let me tell you,
it would be a lot easier.
Yes, that's right. And let me tell you what we're doing about that, okay? Because the problem we had, we talked to several appraisers, nobody would appraise the reversion rights. Okay, they wouldn't do it. Okay? Then you got the problem of...
What kind of appraiser did you go to? An AIA appraiser?
We went to commercial appraisers, yeah.
MIA. In this case, the value of the reversion isn't monetary. The value of the reversion is to us as property owners to have control over that property. It's not the value of the lease or the reversion rights. It's what do you want to do if something goes south with that? Do you not want to have a say in what's done with that property? It's as simple as that.
So that was part of the reason was we couldn't get anybody who would tell us they would appraise the reverter. What we're doing right now, Ray's in the process of talking. He's already contacted several appraisers to come at it from the point of view, let's appraise the water rights. You know, if that's $2.5 million or something out of 2.75, I don't think it's hard to convince yourself that 225 acres of land and a bunch of infrastructure is worth another $50,000 or whatever. So we're trying to come at it from that point of view right now. The other problem with the appraisals commercially is, what do you appraise it as? We don't want it as a golf course, so it doesn't make sense to appraise it as a golf course. So, well, because we're not buying it as a golf course. That's probably the lowest use of the land.
You could get it appraised at its current situation, a golf.
But that's not what we're buying. That's the
But
problem.
the thing is, you use in here, how did you arrive at the value?
Well,
You
we've
just
already
use all the golf courses.
Well, but we've already done that. That's on the website. You can look at that. We've looked at all the golf courses that have sold in the last several years. We've looked at whether they sold with water rights or without water rights. That's all that stuff's on the website.
But you can also ask for highest and best use
Yes.
You could ask for
Yes.
whatever use you wanted it at to get a value.
And we're coming at it from the point of view of the law.
Professional.
Well,
What do you want?
yellow shirt.
Instead of all this appraisal stuff,
Thank you.
let's keep it to the absolute value. If you wanted to sell it today, now listen here, and you want to catch this too, is the fact, if you wanted to sell it today to a farmer in Fallon after meeting all the requirements or whatever, because water's short anyway, what's the book value that you would get for it?
Of the water or the land?
The water rights, forget the land. The land's gonna be weeds.
Well, like I said, our estimate, and we're talking to appraisers to get an official one, but we know water that's just sold for $5,400 an acre foot. We were given a estimate, kind of broad brush, because we have river rights, we've got well rights, we've got some spring rights. They all have different beginning. They also, water rights are dedicated as to use, whether it's municipal quality. That's why you get this 6,000 average number.
I
Yeah,
understand that.
that's
What
what
I'm trying to do is
Yeah.
make it the worst situation. You're in a drought situation, and like you say, a lot of times there was permits.
Yeah.
What's the lifespan of these permits?
They're good.
Forever.
Well, I mean, I assume that the state can, I can't tell you that I know there's absolutely no way the state will come back.
All I'm trying to do is dumb this thing down to the point of, if you want to sell, literally, forget the wells, because they aren't convenient for anybody unless you're living right here. But that river goes on over to Pyramid and Fallon and that. That water rights, at a certain level, except right now, it wouldn't be worth anything, because you can't use that water.
Well, they'd still be worth something. Right now, you could go to Tumwa and buy Truckee River water rights, you just can't pull it right now. But they charge like $9,000 an acre.
What I'm saying is if you were gonna sell your water rights, the book value right now to somebody else, that's really the bottom line of this thing. Forget all this $100 acre supplement, because that's just up here. And the Truckee River water is more mobile.
Well, I'll tell you the way I've heard, and this is my personal view, okay? This is not official or whatever. To me, what this deal's about, I look at the water rights, and based on what we've been told, and we're trying to confirm, we're talking, 2.4 million plus. Okay, and we get the reverter right for free. Okay, we're not paying for the reverter right, but we get that.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So
what I
no
said.
matter what happens in the country club, the land belongs to the association, and the association can control it. That's what this deal is about.
Tumwa is 9,000, why isn't our water rights 9,000?
Because the way it works around here is people shop around for other people that own water rights, and they try to get the best deal. So the market price, I've been told right now, is about 6,000. But if you want to go to Tumwa, that's what they charge you, because they've got a price sheet.
But it depends on when the water rights were given.
There's all kinds of things. It's not just when they were given, it's also,
Just say something.
yeah.
The well water rights, or I've been told, are worth more than the Truckee River water. Because Truckee water, as Tony says, has a season. It's subject to the federal water master turning on and off the
Up
spigot.
there in South Lake Tap in North Lake Tahoe.
He's actually located in Truckee.
Yeah.
Okay.
The end's there.
But the well water is something that you control. I've been told well water rights are much more valuable than having Truckee water.
But only very locally.
Those can be sold.
You can put
with all the
infrastructure
rights.
in.
You can sell water, well water as well. And they're somewhat transportable.
Because what you're looking at, the way it works, from what I've learned about it, is you look at broad regions, like we happen to be, I guess there's a new term now, which I don't know what it is, but the old term when I was in school was an aquifer. We've got these water tables underwater, under the ground, okay? And the one we're sitting on is called the Verde something or other, and it takes in this whole area out by Birdie and around here, and a little bit to the east and whatever. You can trade water rights within the same water table area. Now, I'm not using the right terms, but I think you get the idea. If you're down in South Reno and you want to get well water rights, you got to get it from a different group of aquifers. So what happens is, it doesn't matter really that the well is right here in Sierra Canyon. If you were to sell those water rights to somebody over in Boomtown, they're on the same water table, they could just sink a well where they're at and pull it out from there.
Well, that depends upon the rights that were given to you when you got the permit.
But I'm saying that's how water rights are traded. Okay, you have, like North Valleys is apparently another water area and stuff like that. So that's how, this stuff gets fairly complicated. They're not just by date and type of water, but it's also, the water's classified as for what it can be used for. You can only use it for certain things. Some water rights are so flexible you can use it for
It's
anything.
clear that we don't know what our water rights
No,
are.
we do. No, we have all
We
that
don't know the
information.
value.
No, we have all that information.
Well, then you can get the water rights first.
That's what you're saying. That's what Ray's talking to appraisers right now. Yeah.
Tony, I'd like to ask,
When I look at it, I put on a very selfish hat. Sierra Canyon is about a third of it. None of us live on the golf course. Or even see it. So from the perspective of, say, going green or going brown, going away, the other people golf course are gone, that doesn't affect my driving, particularly in Somerset. What I'm really concerned about, or I would be getting something if in fact we actually owned and operated the golf course, so that everybody in Somerset, for a much more reasonable fee than I remember, the golf course. Then being a member of it, being able to sell a property that has rights to go up to.
Well, I would, when you say there's no value to you, I would think you'd be very worried about fire in this area. That golf course is a huge fire break, and it's also the ponds. We've already had helicopters landing here to pull water for fighting wildfires. Okay? It's also a filter for dust and dirt and stuff like that. Okay? If it becomes a common area and we make it into parks or trails, you have use of this. So.
But I understand that I'm paying money to support a loan and so on, but I don't see any mutual benefit for.
No, that's why you get the vote. That's why you get the vote. Other people who live in Sierra Canyon see the value of it. So.
Tony, I've been trying to ask a question for half an hour. Thank you for recognizing me. Thank you for the presentation, and I think you've done a great job in presenting the point of view of the board of directors on the SOA. However, I think there is an alternate view of responsibility when this loan is taken out. I have one sub-question, which is, there is in the current lease, I believe, there's 911 water acre feet that Blake Smith owns, the developer.
We talked about that earlier. That water doesn't exist.
So are you saying then that Blake Smith will have no access to water rights in this
Blake
community?
Smith does not have any residual rights for anything that we're buying.
So no water rights at all? He will have
Not
no
that I'm
water rights?
aware of. We're buying every permit that the country club owns. So that's what we're getting. He has absolutely no rights to any of that.
Okay,
So,
and let me just air this other concern. There are only 200 equity members in the golf course right now. I think that's what you stated. So we're taking out a $2.75 million loan that is going to go exclusively for the use of the 200 people.
you're making the assumption that having the country club here provides zero value to Somerset. If that's what you believe, then vote accordingly.
It is not. Hang on, Tony.
Finish your
question.
Tony, I just want
It's a huge obligation for 2,500 people who can only use the golf course 4 times a year. If this golf course fails, and we have to take over the operating, whatever tax base, all the insurance costs and everything, our dues are gonna go significantly up.
Yeah, they absolutely will.
100, 200 more a month.
No,
We
that's,
don't even know.
that's just not true. That's just not true.
That's not true.
Okay, we have looked at that, we've said that before, it's on the website in some of the questions, okay? Our estimates are, if we were to take it over and run it 100% paid by assessments as a championship golf course, okay? So that it's free to all the members to use, our estimates are that would be $50 to $70 a month increase, okay? That's one of the reasons we're not doing it that way. Okay, there are a lot of the golf club members, I think I can say this honestly, they'd be more than happy to have us take over the golf course and pay 100% and let them play as much golf as they want. Okay, yeah, but that's not the deal that we're doing. Okay, now, if we want to make it in the green space or park, okay, now, it's really hard to come up with hard numbers because you got to answer questions like, well, when does this happen and what exactly do we do and how much do we landscape? But if you wanted to just let the grass grow and cut it green and keep it that way, we've done a couple of rough shots at that. Okay, this is my personal estimate. It's not official. This is what I've done myself. $1 to $3 a month is what it would cost. And as houses build out, so we have more than 2,500 houses, that price goes down. You know, it doesn't cost that much to have a guy on a riding lawnmower cutting grass for 8 hours a day and doing that every couple of weeks or every week and a half or whatever time you want to have. Okay, so the idea that there's any way in the world that this turns into adding $200 a month to your assessment is just, I don't think, based in reality. I don't think there are any numbers that support that.
So that's something.
Right. And then figure, okay, within the next 10 years, we'll have 1,000 more homes. Okay. So that's gonna cut down proportional contributions.
It's not so much a financial argument, it's a fairness argument. This deal basically uses the borrowing power of the association to finance the golf course operation.
Well, I don't see it that way. What it does is it buys in advance the property to secure the future of Somerset. You tell me, what's the golf course's condition gonna be? What's the country club's condition gonna be 10 years from now, or 5 years from now? Can you tell me that they're gonna be here or not? Can you guarantee that? No, nobody knows.
If we bought it and operated it for the equitable benefit of all SOA members, then we have control too.
Well, do you think that right now you would get 50% of members or something to vote to up their assessments by $70 a month?
It's not gonna be 70, it's not gonna be
No.
near 70.
No, I think, well, it will if you look at the operating costs of the golf course.
Yes.
No, I've looked at those numbers, okay, and that's assuming you take the White the restaurant out. Did not use any of the restaurant numbers for that, okay? If you look on the website, we've laid out how we did that calculation and how we came up with those numbers. Okay, so take a look at that, and there's good numbers. Yeah, you.
I've never lived in a community like this before, so I'm new to this kind of living. And my question is, have association dues ever gone down?
Yes, they went down year before last. They went down by, I think, what, $3? Well, it depends on where you live. Okay, if you were on a public street in the main part of Somerset, that was, I think, the smallest decrease. If you were on a private street, they got a bigger decrease. It depends on kind of where you were at, because we do the budgeting by different cost centers according to what the reserve levels are and all kinds of stuff like that. But yes, they do go down. And they went down year before last, and they've stayed steady the last 2 years. So that's what we aim at. And as Ray was saying, they're looking at the budget right now.
Except for the lease agreement.
Possible decrease in some of the cost centers, but it's not finalized yet.
Yes, I'm a Sierra Canyon resident, but we're all in Sierra Canyon, we're part of Somerset. I'm a Sierra Canyon resident who does feel that the golf course, or if it's a green belt, does affect our values here, even though we're not directly on it. Look at Column Ranch, they don't have a golf course, but they have a nice green belt through part of the development. Column Ranch is a very desirable place to live, whether you're on the green belt or not, or whether you can see it or not. the idea that it's there and creates a beautiful community is important. So even though we're here in the corner in Sierra Canyon, I think it does give us some.
Well, I would suggest if anybody's interested, go online and just Google, put something in there like property value impact of golf course or property value impact of green space. And you get all kinds of economics papers, studies that have been done to look at that. And by and large, they definitely conclude that there's a value to it.
I was just curious, I think I brought this up before to you, but I know you don't want to be in the golf business, or you don't want the HOA to be in the golf business. And that's fine and dandy, but I think we need to be looking at and have the trigger ready for when this current folks that are running the golf course go south on you for whatever reason. Because, greenbelt, that's nice, but boy, that's pretty expensive greenbelt for $2.75 million. And that's before you start cutting, doing any other maintenance. And that's gonna come with the territory regardless. Stand by. But my question is have we approached, I was just Googling, try to see the top 25 golf management companies that run golf courses for a living. Some of these people have 200-300 courses. Now, would they come in, would they operate it, and you wouldn't even have to pay them $2,200 a year just providing the water. I'm just looking at the what if. Because the point is you want to be able to brand. If you want to really bang for your buck, you want to have a golf course, not just a bunch of greenbelt like Coughlin Ranch or anything else. And keep in mind, Coughlin Ranch has been here, 20 years now?
Well,
I'm just going with the what if.
Right.
And that's more of, I think what people are probably looking for is more of a cafeteria plan. Here's door number 1, 2, 3, and your money
Let me
off.
just say one thing about that. I mean, again, it's nice to consider all these possibilities, and I can tell you that we considered a lot of these in the discussions. But the bottom line is this. Okay? The bottom line is this. Okay? That land is currently owned by the country club, with the developer having a residual interest. The developer is the guy who built the country club.
I understand.
Okay, so what he's willing to do with them or whatever, I can't speak for what he can do. But the land was never ours. It's not under our rules. Okay, and they've got all kinds of things they can do. So it's just like buying your house. Okay, I can't come in and say, I want you to sell me your house, and I want you to sell it to me exactly this way, and I want to be able to use it to put up my family, and I want to do this or that. You got to negotiate it. You got to also look at what are they willing to sell.
I understand all that. What I'm just trying to say, once the donkey's in front of the cart here, and we're going down the road, and you've given them the bag of money and life's wonderful, everybody's high-fiving, and everything's great. Mr. Banker over here's got a grin on his face from ear to ear, and life just couldn't be better. And guess what?
Something goes wrong.
You got it. And you got to have the what if.
Right.
And if you don't have that, it's going to take you another year at this rate to get to point B.
Well, okay.
But yeah, that's what I'm trying to
The
say.
question, though, is how long do you put off making any decision while you're looking at every possible decision? Okay, because part of that is we had an opportunity, we had a situation that led to the golf course being willing to talk about this stuff and us being willing to talk to them about this stuff. Okay, now, do I believe that the golf course is in such bad shape that they're not going to be here next year? No. From what I've seen, they're doing a lot better than they were doing a couple of years ago, and I expect them to be around. So we still have the option to work those things out. I haven't talked to management companies, but I know the golf course guys have. Okay, and I have talked to people like Arrow Creek that had a professional manager in there. They're bankrupt right now. They filed for bankruptcy, and I got to tell you, the Arrow Creek Association is scrambling, trying to figure out what to do about it. Because they got caught in exactly the situation that we're trying to avoid. Because that land is owned by a private company that came in to run it. They can't afford to run it. The course has gone downhill, and they don't know what's going to happen to it. They're right now in the middle of bankruptcy and trying to, the last time I talked to them, which was, I don't know, a month or two ago, they were trying to come up with an alternative plan that they can put in front of a bankruptcy judge so that they can hope to keep some control of that land. Okay, we've got the time to work that stuff out. In my mind, there's absolutely no question that the course is not going away tomorrow.
I think one of the things that's different is currently right now, you infuse the golf course by, what, $15 a month?
Well, is what we're paying.
Yeah, let's say $12, okay, per unit. So every month they get a,
right.
You see on their ledger, oh, hey, all right, we're fat, dumb, and happy again. Because you can't make this golf course survive on just 200 equity members.
Well, these numbers keep coming up, and I think that the decisions that are going to get made by the community we need to use the right numbers. I think it's critical right now that if we're going to be communicating, that we use the right stuff. We have 360 people paying dues at the club. Golf leagues, we have, well, it doesn't, the money spends the same. So I think what I'm saying is, and it doesn't matter, you might not think 360 is enough. We have 420 some odd members. 360 are golf members, a little over 200 are equity members. And I think what happens, what gets misleading is that if you go running around the community saying, there's only 200 members here, there's only 200 equity, they can't possibly run this place on 200 members. That's misleading. There are 360 members at the golf club, 200 of which have taken a step to become owners, part owners in the golf course. So if you're going to be communicating with the people, say, look, if you don't think we can run it with 360 people, you should say, I don't think they can run it with 360 people. We're darn close, I can tell you that. And that's perfectly fine, and the facts are the facts. But if we continue to say, there's 200 members, that's not true. It's not
One of
accurate.
the other things to remember, though, when people are saying, they're trying to draw these averages and stuff like that, there's a big difference about this golf course than Arrow Creek or Lake Ridge that went bankrupt, certainly Northgate, DeAndrea. Okay. This club owns its own water. Arrow Creek's paying $1 million a year for water right now. That's part of the reason they're bankrupt. Okay, so that makes a big difference in terms of what you see if you're saying average number of members and this and that.
Tony, I just want to make another point here too, is that I've lived here since 2008. We moved here because we wanted to be at a place where there's a golf course. But if you look at Lake Ridge, which was sold in bankruptcy, if you look at Arrow Creek, which was sold in bankruptcy, if you look at Northgate, which is closed, you look at DeAndrea, which is closed, and you look at Verdi, which was also closed.
For different reasons.
For different reasons. This one is member owned. The people that are here are, we are all in. We don't want to see the place close. There is no group of people that has been around any of these other golf courses that's anywhere near as committed. We live here.
See, that
we own the golf course, and it is difficult to hear the nefarious reasons that the members are doing things. We're your neighbors, and I will tell you right now, this golf course is not dead today because the members own it and live here. Otherwise, we are in the same environment. We have the same variables as Arrow Creek. We have the same variables as DeAndrea. We all went through the same market difficulties. The difference here is there's a group of people that have pulled together, the community has pulled together, and it still looks like it's supposed to. The developer left it with some flaws. That's just the way it is. The developer left a private country club in the middle of an incredible community with no clubhouse. That's the way it was left. We're all fighting like hell to go about this business of how can we all put something together that's win-win, and frankly, if enough people get together trying to nitpick every little thing, we'll become one of those other places. And, yeah, go ahead, Tom.
No, I was gonna say, the other thing that I found really eye-opening, when we looked at all the various, the golf courses that have gone bankrupt and stuff like that in the Reno area, every one of them is a public course.
Yeah.
Every one. Some of them had public with some membership stuff, but it was a public course.
Arrow Creek went to
You
public
were
course.
using numbers earlier, talking about if all Somerset owners were allowed to play golf free, which is clearly not a fair situation. Most owners here are not golfers, and so it's not fair to
That
charge
was
them.
to set an upper limit. That's
Yeah,
what
and
they-
that's where that $50 to $70 comes from. That's simply not relevant. The far more realistic scenario is a pay for use. You go out and play a round of golf, you're an owner, you're allowed to do so. So if you buy the course, the Owners Association buys the course, then the owners have the right to use the course. If you actually go use the course, now you have to pay a fee to use it. And under those conditions, the assessment per lot would be probably less than $10 a month.
Oh, no, I think that.
Well, I think, let me finish, because I think that's far more realistic. Now, my question for you is that, as I understand the politics of this negotiation, we are unable to bring that situation about, which I consider to be the fairest set of circumstances, because the developer, Blake, won't give up his reversion rights to allow that situation. Is that your understanding?
No, that's, I don't think that even plays into it. Couple things in response to that. One is, I think your assumption, and I have looked at it a little bit, I think it's fairly unrealistic. The reason is that if the association is divided off and maintained for people to use, if we only charge values on per use basis, well, first of all, if the usage fees don't cover the cost, the association is on the hook. It's a common area, we're required to maintain. Okay, so that means that it's gonna come out of everybody's pocket no matter what. Probably if you start budgeting with the idea that it's gonna be self-sustaining, I mean, unless you have Pebble Beach type fees and you've got an awful lot of people that will pay, okay, you're not gonna.
Pebble Beach is irrelevant. Those guys make so much money.
No, but I'm telling you,
It's not a fair
the
analysis.
number of people that play.
You have a
the
fee
number
for owners who
around,
play, you have a higher fee for non-owners who play.
Well, now you're getting into the public course thing, which has all kinds of
No,
other
it's called a
problems.
semi-private arrangement, because it's owned
You
by the
open it
owners.
to the public so that the public.
And that's
can
called a
come in and play.
semi-private arrangement.
You can call it whatever you want.
That's the common
Every
denominator.
golf course in Reno that went bankrupt in the last 4 or 5 years was that kind of arrangement.
That's not true, it's simply untrue.
Look, we've got them listed on the website.
You know, I keep on hearing this negative BK thing. There's nothing wrong with BKs. Actually, it gets rid of dispersion, better known as the fat in business. And you lean it down, and you find out really what you really need right off the bat. But first of all, the homeowner's situation, if it was gonna be the universe of Somerset, you would market your days, because I've been up there a few days just to kind of check out what was going on, because I was just curious being a new homeowner here. And, I mean, you could shoot a cannon off some days over here, because there's nobody there. I mean, it's like the Titanic yet. All I'm saying is there's no players on the course hardly. So you have basically, and if you're gonna market this thing, you have your highs and your lows. On your low days, especially in the afternoons or whatever, if you want to plan to win, you don't have to charge, what is it, $60 or, I don't even know the rate. I've heard all sorts of prices. And all I'm saying is you could have, anybody, I'm sure you all have casino cards. Casinos finally caught on to it, the airlines did it a long time ago. You know, these players cards. And you have different level card levels for different, when you play and how much you pay and everything else. And you can do it on a variety of different options.
Well, yeah.
Well,
you could-
and every golf course has that. Every public
Yeah.
golf course has a twilight rate.
You know, we've
They all
looked at a lot of that
New
stuff,
Somerset
and,
doesn't, do they?
Well, the
you know,
challenge
if there were
is,
many people willing to pay rounds
it's
for
not
general
public,
community,
and
and 2 rounds a year would have to.
the public model is harder
You
than
don't
what we're
have
doing
that
now.
many people.
Unless somebody like me who's not on there.
Couple things real quick. One, I think people in Sierra Canyon would be surprised to know how little the golf course really contributes to the
It's
value
the
of our
only
golf.
model that works.
It's purely
I wish it was
simple.
better for every individual.
If you think of
But
it,
if you look around,
the people who live on golf course,
if you
the
work,
view of the golf
it's
course,
the greatest thing
we didn't have any of that.
Well, we didn't say that. All I'm saying is there's 5, there's 5 courses that are public that are, well, it's not entirely.
There used to be 20 airlines too.
Yeah, I can't believe about that. You know, I'm saying that. The private model, this place,
They
and
may
Hidden Valley,
say,
is not, they're